What are the latest web design trends and how are top-tier web design agencies standing out today, even when AI can make a website in seconds? If you're new here, my name's Aliena. Not long ago, every company wanted their website to look like Apple. Clean, sleek, strong, cutting-edge, techy, expensive, minimal yet fancy. It's giving billionaires row in New York City. But as time goes on, every company now looks clean, sleek, strong, and techy, minimal. It's like building 100 more billionaires row in New York City. The style may still work, sure, but it no longer stands out. That is why today's web design trends are getting wilder and wilder. One trend is exaggerated hierarchy, especially through bigger and bolder fonts for headers. Take a look at this one. Wix Studio, deliver brilliance, smash deadlines. So simple, so strong, and so large. Here's another one. Financial infrastructure to grow your revenue. So you basically take the most important words, make them bigger, and deprioritize the rest. In this way, you highlight the most important thing. Another trend is that color is back. And let me start with an extreme example. This is the website of a fintech company, Rapid. So honestly, if I take off my glasses, I will think this website sells energy drink. And of course, not all companies use color to this level. So Monto, for example, they also use this color throughout their site, but it is in a more subtle way. It combines it with a simple, sleek tech product landing page style. And actually, Monzo was like the first banking app that I really enjoyed, and I think I got to know it in London. And MailChimp, for example, it's all about one bright color, yellow. MailChimp want the world to know how yellow they are, and they did it. It is working. Using color shows how confident your brand is. They create an emotional effect. It gives a little bit of dopamine hit, and it helps the product stand out. But of course, this is part of the bigger brand design decision. You can't just throw in a random color or change the brand's color entirely for a web design project. The next big trend I see is that websites are becoming more and more human. I mean, AI tools can already make perfectly aligned, sleek landing pages, and people are bored of corporate-looking sites. That is why tech companies themselves, they even want to bring a little bit human into their design. And one trick they use is custom illustration. A very obvious example is Notion. If you remove the doodles from Notion, this is just another perfect big tech landing page. But these doodles bring it to life. Without them, it's like entering a corporate networking space. With them, it's like stepping into your Japanese friend's apartment. Super cute and organized. Another example is passion fruit. This product is designed for the creator economy, and I love these doodles. These are so cute. So how do you design like the top-tier agencies these days and bring these kinds of works to life? I interviewed some of the top-tier design agencies, and let me share a process that I really like. So one thing that I learned is that these agencies, they get to work with really good clients who have tons of budget, perfectly written content, and lots of brand assets. So their added value is purely from visual storytelling and executing that design. At the discovery stage, we ask as many questions as possible to understand the client's business. Their scale, their product, their audience, their web design goals, their cat, their life, their city. Just kidding. I mean, in the United States, technically you do need to do some small talk before going into the business talk. But please adjust based on your culture. And you might assume that the purpose of any web design work is to drive conversion, aka help them sell more. But many times, especially in Silicon Valley startup world, I found out that the goal of a landing page is simply to impress investors. I've even heard of companies who design an entire new landing page just for investors, and they have a different page, different website that's a more practical one for their customers. That is why it is so important to dive deep in the discovery stage. You don't want to miss anything here. And in this phase, we also need to set a timeline. We need to define how and how often we'll communicate with the client and clarify whether building the site is included. And if building the site is included, you can charge more and the client will save more time and energy. Next comes the design stage, and we first explore different styles. Here's my secret rule of thumb. Usually I don't say this for free, but I'll just share it with you. I call it clarity, call to action, and emotion. Our goal is that within 5 seconds of looking at the top part of the website, a viewer should first perfectly understand what the product does. Second, know what action they need to take next. And third, feel an emotional response that drives them to take that action. So take this as an example. This is a postcard scanning and storage app, and it also sends cute notifications based on what you've received before. And I explored 2 styles. The first one is the more standard and safer option. The second one is a more creative and experimental option. And the second one also uses some trends, exactly like what I talked about before, exaggerate hierarchy, dopamine colors, and bring a little bit more human elements. And when I craft these styles, I like to start with just pure imagination. So basically ideating from within. And then I still like an artist. I reference tons of other websites. I gather inspiration from different places, and I gradually refine my work based on these new ideas. And quoting from Still Like an Artist. If you steal from one author, it's plagiarism. If you steal from many, it's research. So by the time I got here, I had like 100 micro iterations already. And I also asked my design co-working buddy, and she provided me tons of feedback too. The frame size I use for my designs are shown as follows. These sizes are pretty easy to implement in the engineering stage, so feel free to copy them. And feel free to use yours too. Next, we'll take these styles to the client and ask them to choose one. So for this project, this is just an imaginary app I came up for the sake of this video only. So I just asked for vote from 7 of my friends. And the results were surprising. 6 out of my 7 friends voted for option 2. Here's what they said. They felt the second one was more clear. They didn't have to read the text to understand what the product is about. And another thing is about the emotional effect. And this thing made it so easy for me to make the decision. So when my friends saw the option 1, they felt like they were looking at just another corporate site. And they said that this triggered the rational part of them. They started to think about things like product market fit, how AI is used, and analyzing the business in a more logical way. But when they saw option 2, all that rational thinking disappeared, and they felt the site was just special, human, and cute. And they said it made them trust the founder behind the product significantly more. And it made them want to join the waitlist a bit more. And that is exactly what we want from visual design, the emotion. And in specific terms, it triggered a combination of curiosity, tenderness, affection, empathy, and anticipatory joy. Or we can just summarize it as, whoa, followed by, aww. And that worked. Of course, this isn't always the case. Most of the clients and most of my clients, they would want a combination of both styles. So you will need to go one more round on the styling part. And next, we need to design the entire page. We usually don't show low fidelity work in this stage, but personally, I am a strong believer in lo-fi first. It's just that my lo-fi step may take only 3 minutes because I use grayscale and then I just map out the location and weight of different sections, and then I use a different frame to design the high fidelity version. And you can see this is the hi-fi work I came up with. I added a lot of my own illustrations to make it feel a little bit more human. And this is also another thing suggested by my co-working buddy. She told me to drop this text into the illustration box. And I did that and I really like it. I had so many iterations, by the way, and it is so normal to have multiple calls with clients and go through rounds of feedback here. But here's something you already know, and I just want to say that again to remind you. If you don't set a finish line for a design project, it will never end. Design is a very subjective thing, and people's tastes are fluid. That is why the timeline set in the discovery stage is so important, so stick to it. And to do that, about 1 week before the deadline, please tell the client, In today's meeting, please provide your final round of feedback, and no further changes will be implemented after today's meeting. And finally, we arrive at a design we approve for both desktop, mobile, and sometimes also tablet. The next step is engineering. Today, we can use a no-code tool to build a site like this, and I will show you how to do it with Wix Studio. Wix Studio is a web creation platform for designers and design agencies. It has a Figma to Wix Studio plugin that is a lifesaver for us designers, and it also has an AI-powered responsive design feature. Click in the description and let's get started. When you log into Wix Studio, click Create New Site in the top right, then select Studio Blank Canvas. Next, click the top left logo, select Tools, and then choose Import from Figma. Then, paste your Figma file link into the field and hit Connect. Now, go back to Figma and search for the plugin called Figma to Wix Studio. Click Setup Export. Check I'm done connecting my file. And select Export Styles. The plugin is smart enough to export all fonts and colors used in your design, even if you didn't set up styles in Figma. Then click Export Styles. Now let's go back to Wix Studio and refresh Export. You should see all the styles being imported. If any fonts are missing, you can import them manually. When you're ready, hit Apply Styles to Site. Next, we'll import your Figma desktop frame into Wix Studio. Go to Figma and go back in the plugin window. This time, let's use Export Frame. Select the frame you want to export. Here, some people prefer to export section by section for more control, but for today, I'll demonstrate exporting the entire desktop frame directly. Hit Export Frame. Now, let's go back to Wix Studio. To quickly access the Figma tool in Wix Studio, go to the left side toolbar and click the Figma icon at the bottom. Hit Refresh Import. Here, the default option is Add Frame as Page, which will place your exported frames on an entirely new page. If you want, you can use the drop-down and change it to Export as Section or Container. Click Add to Site to start the import. Ta-da! Now our design is fully imported into Wix Studio as a standalone page. This is how it currently looks on the primary desktop breakpoint. You can also view the tablet and mobile breakpoint by clicking the device icons on the top. Wix Studio automatically scales everything proportionally, so at this stage, your design may look really tiny on smaller breakpoints. But don't worry, you've got all it takes to fix that and bring your vision to life. Let's do some quick settings first. Remember you imported this design as a new page? On the left side toolbar, go to the Pages tab. Click the three dots next to your imported page and set it as the new homepage. Then delete the old homepage. As a best practice, let's also rename our page to Home. From this point on, you need to bring out the most patient, positive, and analytical version of yourself. You know how when you work with engineers, your design just never turns out exactly the way you designed it? Well, you're about to find out why. And here's your challenge. I want you to compromise as little as possible and try to bring your full version to life. Here's the breakdown of this process. I also noted down how many cups of boba and how many runs you need to take to finish each step. Thank me in the comments. Wix Studio may not perfectly import everything the way you designed, just like any front-end engineer. So first, let's manually adjust the desktop version to make sure every element is placed correctly. You can see all the layers in the Layers tab. And don't overthink responsiveness yet. We're just focusing on getting things in the right place for now. For example, delete the default Wix Studio navigation bar. If you use a textured background, the texture may be imported as a standalone image with 100% opacity. So I like to delete this and place a filled image in the section instead. You can also adjust its opacity here to get to the look you want. This element, for example, doesn't have its corner radius and background blur effect perfectly imported. You can select it and adjust its corner radius here. Keep an eye on the little star beside the pixel value. If there's a star beside the pixel, it means the element is set to scale proportionally, and the corner radius will be smaller on smaller devices. If you want your elements to scale but not its properties, toggle off Scale Properties. If you want the entire element to not change size, change its responsive behavior to Fixed. The background blur effect is called Glass effect in Wix Studio. However, you can't directly apply it to an image. You need to right-click and select Place in Container. Then, you'll be able to toggle on Apply Glass Effect and adjust it from there. For other sections, you might need to adjust their height and the positions of the elements. After this, I like to publish the design to a temporary site using the button in the top right. Input a custom URL for your site, then hit Save and Continue. Now you can use this link to check your work. And if you make further edits to the site, publish it again before checking the result. Here, we can see that most things on the site look good on the desktop breakpoint, except this notification thing. Okay. So here's what you can do when you see a problematic element like this. Just ask yourself, which layer went wrong? In my case, I know it's the outer container layer that I just added. Basically, I forgot to add a corner radius and also make that layer fixed. You can go back to your design and adjust things like this. After this, your site should look good on the desktop breakpoint, but it will be too large on larger breakpoints and too small on smaller breakpoints. This is where the exciting part of responsive design begins. I have a very simple trick to make the site look great on larger devices. Go to the Layers tab, and for each section of your website, on the right, simply toggle on Apply Max Width. If you want to change the max width, hover over the info icon and adjust it from there. This essentially keeps everything within a set width, even when viewing the site on a huge monitor. After that, you can publish the site again. When you view your site through the link, you'll notice that it will still shrink for smaller window sizes, but if you make the window larger, it stays at a healthy, readable size instead of becoming overly large. Cheers! Next, we'll work on smaller breakpoints. Before that, I suggest you to go for a run and buy yourself a no-sugar boba tea. Boba already has sugar in it, so there's no need to add extra sugar to the tea. You'll need a good mood and clear mind for the next part, especially if you haven't built a site in the past 3 months. Here are 2 ways to do this. The first way is using Wix Responsive AI tool. This works better for more standard layouts. You can select a section and click the Responsive AI star icon. Wix AI will generate a suggestion for you, and you can choose to apply the design or discard the changes if you don't like it. For my top section, I knew it was going to mess things up, and I'm not surprised. But for this car section, the Responsive AI actually gave me a good starting point. You can try it out for your website. And for any AI feature, I suggest you to come back once in a while to try it out, because it may really improve faster than you think. For this tutorial, I will demonstrate the manual method of making everything responsive. This way, you'll also understand the logic behind how Wix Studio works. Let's start with text. By default, all text is set to scale proportionally. If you look at its font size, there's a star beside the pixel value. This means that while the text is 80 pixels large here, it will shrink on smaller devices. You might think this works fine for larger headers, but when it comes to paragraph text, it doesn't. So my tip is to change most body text fields from scale proportionally to wrap. Wrap means that the text size stays the same, but the text box may get longer depending on the device size. This ensures great readability and consistency across devices. Next, let's work on images. Are there any images that you don't want to shrink on smaller devices? If so, change their setting from scale proportionally to fixed. This will keep their size consistent across different breakpoints. After this adjustment, your smaller breakpoints will definitely look more screwed up. But trust me on this, we're getting closer to the final result. Your website isn't responsive yet because right now it is just a bunch of elements and containers floating on the screen. In Wix Studio, a container is like a group in Figma. It is not smart. To set up something smart like auto layout in Figma, we need to create a stack. So select multiple elements that you want to arrange vertically or horizontally, then right-click and select Create Stack. Wix Studio will automatically set up a gap between elements, but you can always adjust it later. Now, if you switch between different breakpoints, you see that the layout is getting closer to the final result. Here's what I want you to remember. Always adjust things on the desktop breakpoint first, then customize smaller breakpoints later. Why? Because changes made to the smaller breakpoints won't affect the primary desktop breakpoint. But any edits on the desktop breakpoint will be reflected on smaller breakpoints. So for example, I realized I need to center align all these elements. So I will go back to the desktop breakpoint, set them to center aligned, and now all other breakpoints are also centered aligned. I go on to make lots of adjustments on the top layer, and I end up fixing most of the elements per breakpoint. The mobile breakpoint requires a different postcard element, and if you want to add an element for a small breakpoint, especially if you need to add it inside an existing stack, you need to go back to the main desktop breakpoint, add it to the stack, hide it from the desktop breakpoint, and unhide it from the mobile breakpoint. After adjusting for all breakpoints in the hero section, here's the final result. For some sections, you may find it easier to rebuild the entire part using a layout grid. Select the plus icon in the top left, then go to Layout Tools and choose Section Grid. This pre-built layout grids make it easier to adjust for responsive design. And on mobile, I'll just change the layout from columns to rows and adjust it from there. When you're done adjusting all elements for all screen sizes, publish it again and check out your published site. If you've made it this far, you deserve to reward yourself with something. Something good, okay? Next, if there's any link or button on your site, select the element and add a link by clicking here. If you're like me and have designed a highly customized look that also includes functionality like signing up for a mailing list, then you may need to use custom code. Even though I have a computer science degree, I am not good at coding at all. So I asked ChatGPT to write the mailing list function for me. And it kind of worked. I still ended up spending a lot of time on this though. Next, let's bring in some magical effects. Select the element you want to add motion design to, then go to the second tab on the right. Here, you can experiment with different effects. I'm going to add an entrance effect for this hero section. And for these smaller notifications, I also want to add a loop effect, making them look like they are floating around. Look at the result after adding these motion designs. This is definitely a huge glow up. We're so close to finishing up. Next, let's quickly set up the SEO. On the Pages tab, click the three dots next to the home page and select SEO Basics. Paste in the website title and meta description your client provided. Now let's publish the site. Hit Publish again and choose Connect Your Own Customized Domain. Type in your domain. If your client hasn't bought the domain yet, you can purchase it directly from here too. If they already own the domain, click Yes, I own this domain. And at this step, you need to upgrade your Wix Studio plan. Choose the plan you need, and on the Payment tab, go to the bottom left and select Create a Payment Request. Enter your client's email, and they'll receive an email asking them to complete the payment. Once your client made the payment, you should be able to connect the custom domain and publish the site. Your client will be so happy to see this, and I'm sure you're happy too. Isn't it so satisfying to bring your design to life? The process I shared today works really well if you're working with high-profile, reliable clients. So if you're charging more than $20,000 USD per project, then visual design is the primary thing to focus on, and this tutorial will help you a lot. But for most of our client work, we can't always expect to work with perfect clients, and we can't expect them to have perfect copy. We even can't expect them to have perfect sales funnel or have a brand strategy. And what can we do in that case? What if the main purpose of their site is simply to drive conversions? Well, that is most of the clients, and I shared how to work with them in this video. So I will see you in this video. I'm Aliena. If you want to go beyond web design and learn how product design works in big tech, and learn why and how some designers are easily making more than 6 figures, you shall check out my program, Fast Track UX. And I will end today's video with this clip from my marriage certification party.